Alrighty, so I switched out my basket and now I'm going to go and see if there's any seeds that we can collect in the garden to save for next year. So for the first seed saving section of this video, I'm going to start off with what is probably the easiest seed to collect ever, and that's nasturtiums. So here we have my nasturtiums. They are still doing absolutely beautiful. The reason why I say these are the easiest seeds to collect is because they literally fall right off the plant. So if you look at the plant, what happens is each of the flowers, they'll bloom, and then once they bloom and start to die back, let's see if we can find an example. Maybe in this one you can see. If you look real deep in there, do you see the green? It looks like 3 balls in the very center. That's the beginning to the nasturtium seeds. So once the flower starts to die back, those green little seeds will get larger and larger until they start to look like, let's see if this one has them. You can see they're a little bit bigger in this one. So they'll get larger and larger until the petals of the flower start to fall off. And then once the petals to the flower fall off, all that you're left with is something like this. So these are the seed pods to the nasturtiums. Now these ones aren't ready yet because they're still attached to the plant. But as they start to dry out, they will literally fall to the ground. Look at how easy this is. And then you just come along and pick them up. Now this one here is a perfect example of a totally dried out nasturtium seed. This is what you want it to look like once you put it in to save it. If you come across something like this where it's fallen off the plant but it's still pretty, it's not exactly dried out, then you would collect these, put them on a paper plate or a paper napkin for a couple weeks until they start to look like that. Once they look like this, then you can go ahead and store them in your seeds. So we're going to go ahead and pick up all of these. Now, if you're anxious to go ahead and collect these seeds and you don't have the time to wait for them to fall off of the plant on their own, you can go ahead and pick the green ones as long as they're about this size off of the plant, and you can set them out to dry. They will eventually dry out fine on their own. You just want to make sure that they're large enough. It is better for you to wait for them to fall off the plant by themselves because then you know that they are ready for sure. So the next one that we have seeds that are easily available right now is our parsley. So if you've been following the videos of the herb garden, you've seen that the parsley has bolted and is just shot straight up. It's probably about 3 feet tall at this point. But we were waiting for the flowers to bloom and then the seeds to set so that we could collect seeds from it. So we've got a couple pods here that I think are ready to go. We'll go ahead and collect those seeds, and then I'm thinking about just chopping the rest of it off because I think it looks terrible, but I'll show you how to do that right now. Okay, so this is our parsley plant as it stands now. If you were following closely, this parsley plant is actually a 2nd-year parsley. We had it in a pot last year and we brought it into the house over winter, and then we planted it in the garden bed that Tyler made for the herbs at the beginning of the spring, and he did really well. He did really well, but he is now bolted and flowered, and we have some areas now where we're starting to collect seeds. So once the plant matures, it'll shoot up these sprouts that will then turn into flowers. So you can see here kind of what that looks like, what the little parsley flowers look like. Now these flowers are still pretty new, so they don't have any seeds on them yet, but we've got some areas where the flowers have bloomed and died off, and now you can see those little seed pods on the end. Those seeds are what you need to collect to be able to grow more of them. So we've got this one here, and we've got a few more down here that have seeds that are ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these and collect them for seed. So from what I hear, another one of our cantaloupes fell off. So while we're talking seed collecting, we might as well see if we can collect some cantaloupe seeds while we're at it. So upon first review of the cantaloupe, it probably was out here a little too long. It's a little too ripe, and if you look in there, we've got bugs. So something's beaten us to this. With that being said, the perfect cantaloupe that we have. I'm gonna take a look at it because I want to get to that before the bugs do. See if we can get in here with the camera. So he's still on the vine, pretty good. He doesn't seem to want to let loose. But let's just look at the rest of him. Yeah, he does look like he's got a split in him here. I don't know. He does not want to come off the vine. We're gonna leave him for another day. I'm gonna come back out here and check on him tomorrow, and then we might pick him. But he really does not want to come off that vine. He's just not ready. This one, on the other hand, it doesn't have the same outside as that one does, which is why we've been referring to that one as like our perfect one, because it just looks perfect. But oh, it smells so good. And you can see here on the end that it kind of gave away from the vine all on its own, which is what they're supposed to do. So if for nothing else, we do have bugs, so that's not good, but if for nothing else, we should be able to get seeds out of this one. So we'll cut him open and see what seeds we can get. So some of the easiest seeds to save are peas and beans. A lot of times with my peas and my beans, my peas specifically, I'll pick them when they're still fairly young. Like you can see this one here, he's still very, very young. I could probably let him go for another day or so before I pick him even to eat. But sometimes I'll pick them at this stage just because they taste better. But if you want to save them for seed, you want to wait until they are very, very mature. To be honest, the best way to do it is to just leave them on the plant until they dry up and shrivel all on their own. The plant will allow them to dry up and shrivel. Then you can pick them right off. You just crack the casing open and dump the seeds out. Really, really easy. Beans and peas both. Again, if you are a little bit more anxious than that, just wait until you have a very, very mature pea or bean, and then you can pick it. But you want to wait until you see those seeds that are bulging out of the skin. You want them to be as big as possible. Then you can pick it, you can set it out to let it dry on its own, and then once it dries crisp, you can crack the peel open and get the beans out. Very simple. These ones are actually peas that were saved from seed from our summer peas. So if you follow the videos and you saw the peas that were growing on this side earlier in the summer, these are the seeds that I saved from them that we've got growing on this side of the trellis now for fall. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking about how to save seeds from your vegetables. I've saved a ton of seeds from peppers and tomatoes and cucamelons this year. This specific video, we're kind of focusing on some of the easier stuff, the dry seeds to collect. I will do another video in the future on how to collect seeds from stuff like tomatoes or cucamelons. There's an extra step in that process, but one thing that I haven't done much of is saving seeds from flowers. So one of my favorite flowers that we came across this year were my Gerber daisies. Bam, let's see if we can get them down here. So I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to collect some of the seeds from these guys as well. Let's check it out. Alrighty, so here we are. Aren't they beautiful? I just love the color too. The color was so unique. It's like highlighter pink, that's what I call it. So we've got some of the ends here that have died back. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut the heads off of these and see if we can get some seeds out of them. Okay, so these are our parsley seeds that I was able to collect that are totally dry. This is plenty for me to save myself. I am going to try and let some of the rest of them dry out on their own so that I can do seed swaps. But this should be plenty for me to save for my own harvests or for my own gardens next year. So these seeds are fairly tiny, so I can go ahead and put those in the jar. Alright, so I've got my little jar here. I'm just going to go ahead, pinch some of the seeds in. That is what's nice about these little jars, is that they're glass, they're clear, you can see what's in them. They don't take up that much space. Alright. Then I'll go ahead and I'll get a cork, pop the cork on, and that is a pretty good collection for me to have to start more parsley for next summer, next spring. So we'll go ahead, write parsley on here, tie it around, and we're done with parsley. Now, when you are using these little glass jars, it is very important that what you're putting in them is totally dry. If you put anything in here that is not totally dry, it will mold and you will lose everything that you've saved in your seed packet. Now, the upside to this is that if kept in an area that it can get air, it's okay if your seeds aren't entirely dry before you put them in here, because they can breathe. So I think that I'm going to use this for some of our seeds that we've gotten here that weren't entirely dry. So for example, our nasturtiums. The nasturtium seeds that I got that were on the ground, one of them was very dry and was fine, but the rest of them are still fairly green. But I can use this as long as I set this out long enough for them to dry out. So I'm going to go ahead and put my nasturtium seeds in this bag. Alright, so we've got our nasturtiums in there. We're going to pull it tight. That was actually a pretty good harvest for nasturtiums. That's plenty for me for next year. I don't even really need to save any more unless I want to save some for seed swaps, which is my goal. But this is plenty for me if you figure each one of these gets me one plant. The one that's down there is just one plant, and I've had plenty of nasturtiums, but I would love to have some more planted throughout the garden, the vegetable garden, next year. So I'll go ahead and save these. Just gonna go ahead and label them, put them away. Okay, so next we're gonna go ahead and do the Gerber daisies. Now, the seeds in these are fairly tiny. So what you can do is you can just go ahead and pick off all of this, and if you don't care that there's fuzz attached, you can go ahead and save this whole thing and plant this. You'll get Gerber daisies out of it. But if you really wanted to, separating the seeds in Gerber daisies are very tiny. So you can go ahead and probably keep them in the glass jars that I have versus the baggies. So I'm trying to separate this. I know I'm not showing you, but you guys couldn't really see anyways. And try and lay out the seeds in my hand so that you can see in my hand. Okay, so there you can see I've got 3 of the Gerber Daisy seeds. That's how tiny they are. They're very small. So you can see once you get into the fuzz, you can see where the seeds are. It's just a matter of separating them out. Now, since I'm saving these for myself and I'm not planning on seed swapping them, the fluff does not bother me, y'all. I don't care about the fluff. So I'm gonna just pull the fluff off, save myself a whole lot of time, take the fluff, get a bag, and I'm gonna just store the fluff with the seeds in a bag instead of sifting through everything. So, and like I said, you know, it probably doesn't look nearly as pretty. If you were doing seed swaps or whatever, you would probably want to spend the time to go through and separate them, but this will store just fine in one of these bags. So that's what I'm gonna do with my Gerber Daisy seeds. Alrighty, so from the little seed heads that I pulled off, the dead flower heads that I pulled off, I've got about a third of a bag full. So go ahead and tie this shut. I'm gonna label it and it's ready to be stored. Okay, last but not least before my phone dies is to collect the seeds here from our melons. Now, I did have one that I'd picked a couple days ago that needed to be cut open. So I cut it open today. This isn't the one that we pulled out of the garden today on video, but it's a different one. So same concept though. Super simple, guys, super simple. All you need is a paper plate, a spoon, and your melon. So, got a dog with me. Alright, so we've got our cantaloupe here. I just sliced it down the center, cut it into 2 pieces. And then all you're gonna do is just take the spoon, and scoop out the guts here. Alright, so we've scooped out the center with all the seeds. And just set that aside. Then you've got the rest of this. This is the snack while you collect the seeds, because you have to have a snack, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do that to both sides here. Just scoop out the center, and it should be really easy to scoop it out and put it here on my plate. Now I'll give you a close-up of what the plate looks like. Alright, so here's my plate. Now, what we need to do is we need to separate the seeds from the leftovers here, which I'll go through and I'll pick them out by hand to do so. Then once you get all of the seeds separated, and it's just kind of like the liquid in the seeds like it is over here, then I'm going to run this through a strainer until the seeds are completely dry and lose their membrane. So if you look closely, it is hard to tell, but there is actually a little bit, you can maybe see better on this one. There's a little bit of membrane here around these seeds. We need to get that off before we can dry them to save them. So you can see here, right here, we've kind of got the membrane. My experience with cantaloupe is that getting that membrane off is pretty easy. I've literally just had to run them through a strainer. Once the membrane's off and they're not slimy anymore, set them on a dry paper plate for a couple days, like I said, and they'll dry out. Cantaloupe seems to be pretty easy. Things like tomatoes and cucumbers, that membrane does not come off as simple as this. So with those, you tend to have to soak the seeds, and that'll be another video for another time. But yeah, that's basically it. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna run these through some water, clean them up really good, put them on a dry paper plate, let them dry for a day, and then we'll package them up and they'll be all set. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today and walking through the garden, collecting some seeds, collecting some plants to dry. It was really great to be back outside, but I'm starting to lose my voice. I think it's time to go back inside, turn on a movie, and cuddle on the couch. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon.